thank you everyone for joining us on this Zoom call. We know there's been some technical problems with the Vimeo. We really appreciate it. Thank you for moving over here. So let's get going with this event. It's a BEUC event co-hosted with Maria Manuel Leitao-Mensch, who's a Socialist and Democrat MEP in the European Parliament. We are talking about sewing up the holes in Europe's product safety net. My name is Jack Parrock. I'm a broadcaster and a journalist based in Brussels, best known probably for my work on Euronews. We have a set of 8 panelists that are going to be speaking, so we've got a lot to get through. And because of the delay, we'll just get moving straight away. So I'm going to introduce the panelists as they come up. I think that will be probably the easiest way to do it. If you are on Zoom, don't turn your video on. And if you're having problems, move into the gallery view and you'll be able to see who's speaking and you can pin the person, etc. You might have to do that yourself now rather than us doing it. So I'm going to hand over the floor to Monique Goyens, who's the director of BEUC, who's going to give us a short introduction.
Yes, thank you very much, Jack, and welcome to this event. And thank you very much for your patience with us. Let's dive immediately into this very important topic. Now, consumers in the EU have a fundamental right to health and safety. That's why we have a European legislation that obliges producers to only put safe products on the market. But also, you and I, consumers, have a fundamental instinctive expectation that when we buy something, be it in a shop, in the street or online, somebody has checked that that product is safe and that we can use it without any risk. However, reality is more sobering. And we have carried out, as consumer organizations, our members have carried out quite some mystery shopping, a lot of testing, and there are quite a lot of notifications on the safety gate, on the RAPEX system by authorities that all are only the top of the iceberg, showing that there are quite some unsafe products on the market. And I can, of course, list you a lot, but maybe I can just show you one that my members, one of our members, both in the mystery shopping exercise online. This is a children's sweater with a cord. This is a strangulation risk that is under European legislation considered to be illegal. So you can find it very easily, you can buy it, and you can expose your kids with this type of risk. Of course, having unsafe products on the market is not anything new, but this has taken in the last years another dimension. First of all, because we have more and more online shopping. Now, online shopping first means that you as a consumer, you cannot see the product, you cannot touch the product, you cannot smell the product. And sometimes it's common sense that protects you against buying something unsafe. But also online shopping can put you virtually in contact with producers outside of the EU. And those producers not only are not necessarily having the right appetite to comply with product safety legislation, but also European authorities cannot get any hold of them as easily as European producers. Second risk, new risk, is of course the fact that more and more products are connected. So there is embedded software, meaning that there is a risk of cyber safety, cyber security because of hacking, but also because of faulty updates, software updates, meaning that if a product that is safe when you buy it, because of the software updates, it might become much less safe than before because there can be a bug in the system. Now, this year, 2021, provides us with a unique opportunity to get things right because the Commission has put on their agenda, thank you very much, Pinuccia, the revision of the General Product Safety Directive. And it's a unique opportunity to address all those loopholes and to provide for a future-proof general safety framework. And with this conference, we really would like to kick off the debate from a consumer perspective. And my final words, maybe just to say that I really would like to thank very much MEP Maria Manuel Leitao-Mensch, who has kindly offered to co-host this event. Can I say you are a genuine champion for consumer and product safety. You have been very active in the European Parliament on the own initiative opinion on product safety, but also on the Digital Services Act. So I'm really very happy that we can co-host this event together and work together towards more consumer safety. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Monique. So as we say, let's move on to Maria Manuel. Thank you so much for joining us and for co-hosting this event. We're now going to hear from you and have a short presentation on what you think about this update to the directive.
Thank you, Jacques. Thank you, Monique. I would like to start by thanking BEUC for their great co-hosting this event about EU product safety law. When I start my work in the Parliament's report to prepare the revision of Product Safety Directive, the first things I asked was, what products we are talking about and why does the legislation need reform? So we are talking about non-harmonized products that go from childcare articles, sports equipment, furniture, textiles and pens and so on, and the scope of this legislation is immense. Nowadays, things got more complicated because products are no longer just products, but they are also incorporate software. Therefore, they are dynamic and can change throughout their life cycle. There are many examples, harmonized and non-harmonized products, from this doll, it's Kylie, Wi-Fi connected, to a sample clothes bag that can detect the rain and even notify you when the wash load is dry. Maybe later a robot will pick up the clothes. And the General Product Safety Directive dates from 2001. But for example, the first iPhone came to the market in 2007, meaning the directive was not drafted to deal with these new technologies, such as the Internet of Things, or new business models, such as the ones from online marketplaces. So in the Parliament's reports, we made several suggestions for the Commission to prepare the revision. And I would like to highlight a few of them. The first one is that consumers need to have the same level of safety when purchasing online as they do when buying in traditional stores. The second one is the precautionary principle. I would start by saying that the precautionary principle is not against innovation. On the contrary, it makes innovation safer. A setback with a risky product can paralyze innovation and affect consumers' trust on safety. The third is to make clear that Product Safety Directive acts as a safety net and is always applicable. As I said before, non-harmonized products go from children's bed to the pencils, and we cannot expect to have a specific regulation as we have for toys and healthy device for each one of them. And the final is to ensure a better enforcement of the law. And for that, we need European Union's market surveillance authorities and customs to be further equipped with more effective tools, such as AI and blockchain. To sum up, I believe we should strive for Europeans to be the best protected consumers in the world. This is good for economy, for our competitiveness. And for that to happen, we need product safety legislation to remain fit for purpose. We need to empower consumers in the context of this big and disruptive digital transformation. I'm looking forward to listening to our panels, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Maria Manuel. Now we're going to move on to pick up on one of the points there that you just talked about, which is improving safety in online marketplaces. As you mentioned, when the initial directive was put forward, online marketplaces weren't a thing. So we're going to hear from Sylvia Maurer, who is the Director of Sustainability, Safety, Food and Energy at BEUC, and Ilya Brugman, who's the Head of Digital Single Market and Consumer Policy at Eurocommerce. So let's start with you, Sylvia.
Yes, good morning, everyone. To launch the discussion, I would like to briefly summarize in a bit more detail this research project that 6 national consumer groups under the umbrella of the International Consumer Research and Testing have been doing, where they have been purchasing on well-known online marketplaces in total 250 consumer products. They have bought these products in different categories. You can say a lot of products for children, but also electric devices. And then we have checked different product groups like clothing, balloons, jewelry, and cosmetics. The project has been done by Testachat, Konsumentenbond, Which, Altro Consumo, and Stiftung Warentest, and the Danish consumer organization Tank Forbrugerrådet. What we found was actually quite shocking. It was, of course, when we selected the products, we made it based on a risk analysis. But when you go to the next slide, you can see how the compliance and the non-compliance breaks down per product group, which means where you see the red, that is the non-compliance, and the green color is used for the products that have been okay. And what is very shocking is actually that there are several product groups, in particular for children, where there was not one compliant product in our samples that we bought at all. And as you can also see, there is no product group which is fully green, meaning we have found safety problems for every product category where we made a purchase. And in total, out of the 250 products, we found 2/3 to be unsafe. That's, of course, very concerning for consumers. When we analyzed also what are the issues, it was very disturbing for us to find that in the traditional shopping, in the offline world, so to speak, the responsibility always travels along with the product, and you can enforce the legislation, the product safety legislation in the European Union. However, when we look at the online marketplaces, we have some serious gaps here. When we go to the next slide, no, maybe I should say briefly also what were exactly the problems that we have found. In fact, they came with partly deadly dangers for consumers. We have found some electric devices that already started melting in the test chamber, so posing a real fire risk to consumers in their homes. And at the same time, we found smoke detectors that were not able to alarm the consumers when there was smoke in the home, meaning there's a double danger for consumers. But there were also a lot of chemicals that we found that can harm consumers' health, like teeth whitening products in toys. And one of my favorites is actually that there are several products that came along only in Chinese labeling, whereas the EU legislation requires that you need to inform consumers in a language that is understood in the country, for example, an ingredients list on cosmetics. So when we go to the next slide, as I said earlier, the responsibilities are very problematic with regard to the online marketplaces. We have there observed a lot of shortcomings. So our member organizations also partly tried to report the unsafe products to the marketplaces, but they did not always take appropriate action when we have informed them. So for example, the products then just stayed online, or they have been taken down and popped up at a later moment. And sometimes we could not find adequate contact details to get in touch with them. And we have in general the impression that the marketplaces do not do sufficient checks on their sellers to see what goes there on for selling to consumers. It's also not always clear for consumers from whom they are buying. And we think there are some serious gaps in the legislation today that we urgently need to address, because otherwise consumers will not be safe when they shop on online marketplaces. I would leave it there. Thank you.
That was really interesting. I was wondering to myself, what exactly was that Chinese frozen product when that was coming up? I couldn't tell. Okay, thank you so much, Sylvia. So now let's move on to Ilya Brugman from Eurocommerce.
Yeah, good morning. So I don't have slides or a presentation like this, but thank you for inviting me. So I think we're really happy that we have the opportunity to be here. So I think my words will be slightly maybe more general, also because with the like Monique said at the beginning, you know, there are proposals now on the table, there are proposals coming up, which will all affect also this debate, but we are still discussing these also with our members, so we do not have on all of those already a clear position. But we represent European retailers, so we are the link, I would say, between producers and consumers, and our members are serving all the 450 million consumers in the EU every day. They do this, you know, via sophisticated and efficient supply chain systems and distributing the goods to consumers. I think during the pandemic, it showed that retailers have proven that they are a reliable but also an essential partner in ensuring that consumers continue to have access to the products they like. But obviously, we don't do this alone because we work together with our suppliers to meet consumer demand and also to provide safe and compliant products. At the same time, I think that's clear for everybody that digital is changing everything. It's not only the interface to the consumer, but also the contact with the consumer and the back office, which is maybe less visible. So it's about how do we source, where do we source, when, by whom was it made, and about having the information that consumers and authorities deem relevant or essential. So digitalization, in our view, is creating new opportunities, it's increasing consumer choice, and it's driving change in our supply chains, and it's increasing efficiency and transparency and competition. But we do no longer actually talk about offline or online environment, as you often see in regulatory discussions. We talk about an omni-channel world, which actually is driven by consumer demand. So consumers can buy their products online, they can buy it via their mobile or in a store, they can pick it up at a pickup point, have it delivered to their homes, or get it in the store themselves. They can search in the store for their favorite product, but they can buy, for instance, the desired edition, design, color, size online. So this is actually seamlessly integrating the online and the offline world into one experience for consumers. So in this world, online marketplaces have become an important platform for many retailers to go online and to reach out to consumers. And we've seen during the COVID pandemic that actually the shift from to online sales have increased massively. And consumers are shopping more online than ever. And retailers that so far did not have an online presence had to act quickly to keep in contact with their customers. And online marketplaces actually facilitated those retailers in doing so. So to remain competitive in this challenging environment, retailers need a legal framework that gives them legal certainty and incentives to grow and invest in these omni-channel strategies and striking the right balance between the different interests. And maybe this is something I should have started with, but obviously consumer confidence is a key priority for us. And I think to secure this confidence, consumers need to trust that the products they can buy online are safe and compliant with EU law. So, and as such, we fully support the Commission's goal to maintain a high level of product safety throughout the EU. And effective EU legislation must reinforce the actions by business operators with consistent, fair, and effective enforcement to achieve the common goal that only safe products are placed on the market. What we see is missing now is a level playing field between online traders based in the EU and traders or marketplaces established outside the EU, like Monique said at the beginning. So many non-EU market players offer non-compliant products, which can be unsafe and even dangerous. And because these products do not comply with EU rules and standards, they are offered for much lower prices to EU consumers than similar products offered by EU market players. And that are ensuring that the products they offer are safe and compliant with EU rules. So for this, we need a legal framework in the EU where the different pieces of legislation that are regulating the online and offline environment complement each other and leave no legal gap. This should ensure products are safe, consumers are properly informed, they can exercise their rights and get redress. And I think in more practically, this means there should always be a person a consumer can turn to in case of a default or non-compliant product in the EU, regardless of the sales channel. There should be clear, proportionate, and appropriate roles and responsibilities for all market players, regardless of the sales channel. We need more harmonized notice and action procedures that will help detect and remove the online offering of non-compliant products faster. And this should be supplemented by more effective and efficient enforcement and better cross-border collaboration and exchange of information between the competent authorities including improving RAPEX and stopping non-compliant products from entering the EU at the border. So we need to ensure that the Digital Services Act, the reviewed General Product Safety Directive, and the Market Surveillance Regulation are truly complementary and remove any legal gap regarding the sales of goods online. So new or revised rules should target rogue players and not further increase costs for truthful players. Rogue players will ignore the rules anyway, and higher compliance costs will only increase the price gap between compliant and non-compliant products further. So this is, in a nutshell, some of our key points that we have. And like I said at the beginning, we will come up with more detailed positions on different aspects. But thank you already now for listening, and I'm looking forward to the further discussion.
Thank you so much, Ilya, and thank you also to Sylvia for the presentation. So we'll just do a short Q&A on this issue of online marketplaces. We'll involve Marie-Emmanuelle and Monique as well as part of this. For our viewers, for everybody joining this event, please drop your questions into the little Q&A section, which is at the bottom down there. It's easier for me if it goes down in there rather than if it's done in the sort of panel question bar to the side. So thanks for everyone. We will as well continue for broadly the same amount of time that we were going to without the delay. So moving on with the Q&A. I mean, my question there actually is probably first directed to you, Marie-Emmanuelle. What we heard from Ilya was this discussion, this idea of sort of making sure that the rogue players are the ones that are punished, and that the ones, you know, sort of honest, trustworthy people are looked after and don't have sort of cumbersome legislation that they need to work through. How, in the new update to the GPSD, how do lawmakers like yourself ensure that that happens? Where does the balance lie?
Thank you, Jack. There are so many things we are discussing in the Parliament. We discuss between different groups, and we have sometimes different positions, but we try a consensus. As I told before, we needed to, because we have more risky products, dynamic products, AI-based products, we need also to use technology to control the safety of these products. We need first be more precautionary because we don't know a lot of some AI risks. We are starting doing that. We are starting dealing with these new technologies. So sometimes it's better to slow innovation, not to stop it, but to slow innovation, to experiment before scaling up. And also using these technologies to better control the life cycles of the products, to better doing traceability, forcing sectors to do that using AI and blockchain. And finally, probably we need to a different liability of the marketplaces for the unsafe products. Maybe focusing on takedowns only is not the right approach or the best approach nowadays. So it's why it's important to work with market surveillance authorities and preparing them to control not only the physical world, but this online world.
Yeah, so that idea of liability actually is we've had a question in our Q&A from an anonymous attendee. I don't think they mean the sort of anonymous group, it's someone that hasn't given their name. Do you think online marketplaces should assume liability in cases where the consumer has failed to seek redress with the seller? Monique, maybe I can bring you in on that. What do you think? Is that something that needs to be implemented?
Well, the problem for the consumer is, of course, the consumer should always first go to the seller. And if they don't do that, well, then that's the first step, and that would be already a defense from the marketplace. But the fundamental problem with online marketplaces is that the consumer does not know the seller and cannot reach out to the seller. And the marketplace has that should have at least this, let's say, intermediary role. And if the seller cannot be identified, and if the marketplace has not undertaken the necessary steps to identify that seller, then at the end of the day, the marketplace is the only, let's say, party the consumer can reach out to. And you should not forget, nobody should forget that marketplaces make a lot of money with being the intermediaries. That means that they should also ensure that what they are proposing on the marketplace is something that is safe for the people to use.
Yeah, I think this is one of the things as well. I mean, I'm going to ask a bit of a sort of devil's advocate question to you now, Ilya. How do you think consumers work in this sense? Because when you look at some websites, I think online shopping, there is perhaps a sense that people understand maybe that they're getting something that isn't quite, you know, there's some websites we go to and there's certain products that we perhaps change how we would compared to in shops, in, you know, store. How do you think that fits in, and how will that be factored into the new directive, you know, from your point of view?
So, well, I think we have to look at it like this. I think if it's about a product which is offered in the EU, I mean, there is a responsible person that you can turn to under EU product safety law. I think the problem is with products offered from third countries, like I said earlier, and there we see there are still cases where indeed the consumer cannot find back the trader or maybe the producer from which the product is purchased. Also, if this is done in some cases via a marketplace. And I think this is the issues that we need to address. And I guess on one part, there might be a legal gap. You know, there might still be situations where you would have that, so the consumer cannot find the person from who you bought the product, and then, you know, it stops and you don't know what to do. And on the other hand, it's also an enforcement gap, because these products should not enter the EU anyways. So, and we see there's a growth of products being sold from third countries. So this is definitely something, an issue which will increase. So if we don't look now at how we can also improve enforcement, I mean, we can put any rule on paper that we want, but if we are not able to enforce it, or if we don't do it, it's all meaningless. So I think this is really a point where we have to look into.
Yeah, enforcement is going to be absolutely crucial.
No, an idea, Jack, if you allow me, is because it's a proposal from 2012 that the European Commission should receive the right to introduce special traceability requirements. And now we have good technology to do this traceability for sectors where the non-compliance rate or the risk for consumers is high. So there are solutions. We can work with online platforms, of course, and you know, in the ICA, we are going to introduce the principle, know your business customer. Maybe it's not enough for products, but it's a good principle to start with.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think we're going to move. I'm going to move on from this Q&A now, just being aware of time. We'll keep you there, and I think as we move through into the Q&A, I'm going to try and sort of backload the Q&A into the final part. So I'll move on now. And our next sort of question that we're going to be asking is how to include connected products in the future General Product Safety Directive that obviously we're all waiting to be announced by the European Commission. And for this, I'm going to bring in Johannes Kronert, who's the director of the Brussels office of the TÜV Verband, which is a German association of technical inspection agencies, and Stephen Russell, who's the Secretary General of ANEC, the Consumer Voice in Standardization. So we'll start with you, Johannes. Please, you have the floor.
Well, thank you very much, Jack. Thank you all for this invitation and the ability to speak to you today. I've already been presented. I do work for the German TÜV Association, which is representing the German TÜVs, one of the largest conformity assessment organizations carrying out testing, inspection, and certification services. I would like to start with the consumer's view today as well by sharing two results of a study which we carried out in January this year, so it's quite recent. And in the study, we asked German consumers about their use of smart home devices, and we made two interesting findings. The first one is that we found out that most smart devices are currently only used by a relative minority of consumers. For example, 36% are using internet radio, but only 4% are using smart washing machines. Only 3% are using smart toys. In fact, the only smart device that is used by a larger majority are smart TVs. Second, we also found out that the large majority of consumers is actually worried about the IT security of their devices, with 80% of the respondents saying that it is unclear if and how well smart devices are protected against hacker attacks. And still 68% saying that they are concerned that smart devices will misuse their personal data. So I think these findings illustrate quite well that there's still a barrier for consumers. And this barrier is mainly caused by the lack of trust in the IT security of the product. So legislative action is clearly required, and this leads us to the GPSD, which is going to be revised. I've got three key messages which I would like to convey to you today on what needs to be done in the GPSD. My first message is that the product safety definition must be expanded to include IT security. In the current GPSD, as is the case in most other sectorial directives, IT security is not regulated at all. If you look at the current definition of what is a safe product, it only refers to the physical influence exerted on the product. So here we're speaking about mechanical safety, about chemical safety, and about electrical safety, but we don't speak about IT security. And therefore, this definition of what constitutes a safe product must be expanded to include IT security, to include data protection, privacy. And doing so in the revised GPSD would really send a strong signal to the other sectorial directives, like the machinery directive or the toy directive, in which this is not yet the case. And we do have policy tools. We have the Cybersecurity Act, which dates back to 2019. It basically establishes different cybersecurity schemes. So why don't we take the consumer IoT scheme that is going to be developed and make it mandatory for the revised GPSD? This would be one proposition. Now, the second message I've got is that the conformity assessment must be aligned to the higher risk potential of the product. In many cases, the risk level of products increase when they become connected. I think probably this example is already well known, but I want to share it again. If you have a smartwatch for children, by itself, the watch might be very safe to use. But if the mobile application of the watch has an unencrypted communication to its backend server, then this is a very easy way for hackers to intrude into the system and to track the child through the GPS function. So given these new risks, we really strongly ask to revisit the conformity assessment modules, as we think a mere self-assessment by the manufacturer might not be sufficient anymore. We say that if there's a significant risk potential, and this is for us a risk to life and limb, as well as to data protection and privacy, then an independent assessment should be foreseen. My third message is that IoT products must be safe and secure over the entire life cycle. Today, really, manufacturers only have to declare that their product is safe when they place it on the market. And of course, the underlying assumption is that the product's characteristics do not change after the product has been developed and sold on the market. But of course, this is not true. You have connectivity, you have products that constantly receive software updates, which alter their characteristics. You have AI components with self-learning technology. So what is necessary is to ensure that you have a continued safety and security over the product over the entire life cycle. And this essentially means that the concept of placing on the market must be revised. Now, these are our three propositions, and I welcome very much that the European Parliament has included these issues in its own initiative report. Thank you. Just let me conclude by saying that we as TÜV organizations, we have started to introduce a certification for consumer IoT devices, assessing both the functional safety as well as the IT security. However, it must be clear that such business-led initiatives, which are voluntary in the end, they cannot be the solution. We really need robust and risk-based legal requirements. Only this will ensure that connected devices are safe and secure to use. This was my short impulse. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Johannes. So now we're going to give the floor to Stephen Russell.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to be with you today on behalf of BEUC's sister organization, ANIC, the European Consumer Voice and Standardization. I think Johannes has really said a lot of the points I wanted to bring up. So I think it's going to be something of an echo. But I think that when we're looking to advocate for a stronger GPSD, that can only be a good thing. Now, 20 years ago, the coolest mobile phone on the planet was the Nokia 7110, the so-called banana phone from the Matrix movie. I had one, it didn't make me any cooler then, and I was 20 years younger. But by today's benchmark of the iPhone 12, the Nokia was very dumb indeed. And similarly, 20 years ago, the General Product Safety Directive was perhaps the coolest piece of consumer law, if not on the planet, then at least in Europe. For the first time, consumers were offered a safety net that required products not covered by specific legislation to be safe. And as you've heard, the directive became the main safety law for commodities as diverse as furniture, textiles, and childcare products. Now, and also the GPSD was also the first piece of consumer legislation to make reference to what was then the brand new and shiny precautionary principle. Now, for sure, the GPSD has aged better than the Nokia phone, but the wave of innovation that has brought us the smartphone, the smart home, AI, IoT, 5G, and 3D printing, and my goodness, don't we love our acronyms, those mean the GPSD needs to be rebooted. So what do we want to see from GPSD 2, especially for connected products? Well, I've got 5 points. Yeah, Johannes had 3, I have 5. And first, it needs to require products placed on the market to be not only safe, but also secure. And so I agree entirely with what Johannes said. And that's got to be for consumers of all ages and abilities. No one must be left behind. We heard about the smartwatch. It must no longer be possible for a smartwatch to be considered safe if it can be hacked, if it allows a complete stranger to talk to a child and put that child at risk, as the Norwegian Consumer Council discovered a few years ago. And although I hear from business we need to aid innovation, we should not sacrifice the precautionary principle. Second, the GPSD is a traditional piece of market access legislation. It obliges producers to place only safe products on the market. But in the brave new world of connected products, that is no longer good enough. As Johannes has also said, products now need to be required to be safe and secure throughout their expected lifetimes, even when modified by software updates. Third, the stricter requirements introduced in 2019 for the market surveillance of products covered by sectoral legislation need to be extended to the GPSD. At the moment, the requirements for the surveillance of a cot for a baby's doll, which is covered by the Toy Safety Directive, are tougher than those for the baby's own cot, covered by the GPSD. That's a nonsense. More generally, I think we need to consider means to make market surveillance and enforcement smarter and more effective, and ensure the functions of market surveillance and customs dovetail more smoothly. Fourth, standardization and conformity assessment. The implementation of the new GPSD should continue to be aided by European standards, following a hazard-based approach. The development of such standards must continue to include the participation of all interested stakeholders, including consumers, with ANIC reinforcing the collective consumer voice in what is actually a public-private partnership. Moreover, whether the producer chooses to use standards or to comply with the requirements of the law directly, the legislators need to choose a higher level of conformity assessment than the supplier's declaration, where literally the word of the producer is enough. For high-risk products or products with consumers, for consumers with particular vulnerabilities, I agree with Johannes, it is time for independent third-party testing and certification, although I understand and hear the comment from our Eurocommerce colleague. And finally, let's see a general product safety regulation that has direct legal effect without the need for national transposition as with a directive. So in summary, we ask the legislators to act now. The GPSD can no longer protect us in the era of connected products and the Internet of Things. We need to update our legislation by modernizing the concept of product safety and all that entails. As the GPSD applies to all consumer products, we have a perfect opportunity through one unique law to increase consumer protection, trust, and confidence, and help deliver the digital decade. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Stephen. I really like the idea of directives being cool or not. And I think that's something that we should make sure that the Commission is always making sure that their directives are cool. So please, just to everyone watching, you can continue to ask your questions in the Q&A. If they're not sort of directly relevant to the things that we're talking about currently, I'll try and get to them at the end of the session where we'll have a slightly longer Q&A. I'd like to bring Maria Manuel back in here, actually, because I can't remember when we were because of the technical issues, whether Kyla was brought in before we started the actual sort of event, and I saw you showing that doll there. I think, Maria Manuel, my question to you is, how do we make sure this update to the GPSD is dynamic and flexible, considering the sort of technological changes that we've seen in the last 20 years? How do we make sure that any future connected products or any new developments can be sort of elasticated within the band of what this new directive means? You're on mute, sorry. You're still muted. Nope. Let me see if I can unmute you, maybe.
Okay.
There we go.
This is
I think we need
difficult.
to see Kyla as well, Maria.
Yes, it's that. And also, and my watch and my phone. It's most difficult question. It's a difficult question not only to GPSD. It's a difficult question for Digital Service Act we are discussing now in the Parliament, because first of all we need to decide faster than we used to decide, because if not, in 2 years things change a lot. And after we need to approve a legislation that is of course updated, but at the same time flexible to be adapted to the change we are assisting in the world nowadays with this digital transformation. It's not easy, but it's possible to combine some mandatory rules and very clear ones, and other ones more flexible to be adapted to the circumstances, because it's not possible to revise a directive and to transpose into national legislation every year, as we do sometimes in our countries. This is not easy to solve, but we need to discuss this point, as I said before, not only because everything so important about IoT products that are going to rise 20 billions, rising 20 billions last year. It's huge. Probably in the next event, it's not only Kyle with me, but also my clothes be adapted to the temperature. Now it's possible to sport clothes and so on. This is a difficult question for the Parliament, for the Commission, for the Council, for the European Union in general, but we need to find solutions to combine flexibility with mandatory legislation. And I agree with everything we told before. Safety by design. I would like to know from Stephen, is possible certification also in a simpler and faster way than before? Because this is very important if it's possible to do in a way that is compatible with business and innovation and so on. This is my question also to the panelists.
Stephen, the floor is yours to answer.
Well, you can hear me, yes?
Mm-hmm.
It's probably better, I think, for Johannes to answer that, as he's from that industry. But I think we can certainly find ways that to enable, I think, consumer confidence. And it's not just about consumer confidence. I think it's also about ensuring a level playing field for business, that products actually do what they say they do. Yeah. We've got to get, I think, a simple system for higher risk products that, as I mentioned during my presentation, doesn't stifle innovation. Perhaps it's a $64,000 question, but I think it's a challenge that we need to meet, and we have to meet in the next couple of years during the drafting of the new GPSD.
Johannes, let's throw it over to you then.
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, generally, I think when we talk about certification, so third-party conformity assessment, we think, and the TÜVs think, that there should be no compromises when it comes to safety and security, right? A product must be safe and secure, and a high safety level is an indispensable prerequisite for the functioning of the single market, but also for the trust of consumers. However, of course, there must be a risk-based approach. So when there's a product with a low risk, a relatively low risk level, then it is, of course, sufficient for the manufacturer to self-declare that the product is safe, right? However, when it comes to a higher risk level, and I told you the substantial risk, then we do think that it's good that an independent conformity assessment body assesses and looks at the software to see whether it is safe and secure. So there should be a granular, there should be a risk-based approach, and I think this will certainly foster innovation as well.
Thank you. I'll keep it.
Difficult will be to say what is high risk and the low risk, but we can discuss about.
This is the question of the legislator, yes.
That's going to be one of the prime sort of questions, I suppose. We've got one question that's relevant to this, actually, from Pips Korkalainen. I hope I've got your name right. Cyber risks and security. Cyber security risks and threats are not limited to consumer products. They spread via connected devices, obviously. Their question is, can the problem be tackled with the GPSD alone? You mentioned already the Digital Services Act, Maria Manuel. What do you think, Johannes? Can this sort of be a one-stop shop for all of these issues?
No, of course it can be not. As was previously said, it is kind of a safety net for all products. It sets out the basic requirements, the very basic requirements, by saying products have to be safe. And then you, of course, have the sectorial legislations, which stipulate much more detailed requirements. And I think that, of course, it is not only sufficient to revise the GPSD, but it is also sufficient to revise all the sectorial legislations. Because if we talk about machines, I mean, they are connected. If we talk about toys, they are connected. And so, you know, this should be seen as a whole. But of course, it is good to start with the GPSD. It could be a role model for the other legislations.
Thank you. And we also have a question from Evangelia Kepka about consumers do not want, the question is, consumers do not want to connect their appliances to the internet. They're afraid and they don't want them to be at the home. Nevertheless, when you're buying a new appliance, they pay for the spare parts that are necessary for connecting the appliance to the internet. they believe that digitalization precedes consumers will have no choice in paying for smart appliances, and this being a sort of purchasing issue. Stephen, I wonder if you can answer on that. The question is, how should the EU address that problem?
I think again, we've got to work very carefully, I think, with the regulator in making sure we come up with answers that are sufficient, both in ensuring the consumer protection and also in ensuring the level playing field for business. So it's a very delicate question. It requires a delicate answer. But again, I think it's one of those issues that's uppermost on the list of things we must tackle. And again, I think it's something we will look at as we're drafting the new GPSD. But it's a very valuable comment, and I've certainly taken it on board.
Can I come on this, Jack, please?
Yes, absolutely, please.
First of all, I would like to say that innovation, which is of course hype, is only smart if it delivers safely to the people. And I also think that people, there is this hype around smart products, but you also see people, I don't need a smart washing machine, really. And should I pay for that? And maybe the non-smart will be the new black in a few years' time. So there could be a business model going, to the non-smart business back again. But what I really would like to say in this conversation also is that, there is a principle that if you put something on the market, you need to eliminate or mitigate as much as possible all the risks that come with that product. It's in the chemical legislation, it is called no data, no market. And that means that while innovation should not be stifled or impeached, there is also a fundamental principle that needs to be said that if the producer puts a connected product on the market, the producer should ensure that over the whole lifetime of that product remains safe. That means that, I think Johannes mentioned it, the principle of continued conformity with safety requirements needs to be ensured. And that then answers also the question, I think, by PIPA, which is, even if GPSD is only part of the solution, if the producer ensures that a product is protected against, let's say, hacking or any other security issues, then of course, even if there is interaction with other products that are not necessarily consumer products, then as a consumer, I'm being protected. It's part of the solution.
I think
and this, Monique, it's why GPSD revision should be further than the SCA, because in the SCA we speak about content moderation, and now we speak about products. Is a different matter.
If I just leap in here, Jack, it also, I think, brings us to a question I can see that someone was asked about, how do you foresee ICT security for a product like a car that can run for over 20 years? I think we need to bear in mind that during that lifetime of the car, the ICT components should be subject to firmware update. And so what I would suggest is that therefore the firmware is tested and is certified to be safe, and then by type approval, its application in the particular component. I think it can be done, but again, we have to be smart in what we do and how we think about it. Thank you.
So my question would be, there's a big need for this update to happen, and as you're talking about there, Stephen, there's some complicated routes to make sure that this is fixed. Should this legislation, should it be, where does the balance between speed in getting it done and structure, where does that land? I suppose that's probably a question for Maria Manuel, maybe. Do you think this needs to be done quickly?
I hope so, because in the Parliament, with this previous report we sent to the Commission with our position, there was a consensus. So the Commission, on some things we discuss here about the concept of the product, dynamic product, software, and so on, and everything we spoke about in this event until now. And so for the Commission, they have a good report to start with, and it's 2001. the directive, the world was completely different. So we need to work faster in this directive as the first one, and after also to update the specialized legislation on toys and so on, machinery and so on.
And if I can again follow up on that, I think it is the principles that need to be applied are quite clear. I don't think it is very complicated. There must be political will, and there must be not over lobby from some industry sectors to block it. And I think that you know, we have sent a rocket to Mars. We can also achieve a very ambitious GPSD in the months to come.
Can I jump in again, Jack, just
and
quickly?
I know everything is consensualized in the Parliament.
I would say in the legislation, we need to get the overall framework correct. We need to get the limits correct. As we have done in sectoral legislation now for 35 years, I think we can expand the use of European standards actually to specify how that level of safety is reached and then how it is tested. So I would ask the regulator, just do the essentials, but that certainly should include the safety limits, but leave it to the standardizers to fill in how it should be done and what it looks like.
This is a very good way to assure flexibility, combining the very good principles with standardization.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna leave this sort of aspect there for now. Thank you so much for Stephen and Johanna. Stay with us. We will, as I say, return probably to some of these points later on. But now we're going to move on to really kind of where the ball is in the particular court at the moment. And we are going to speak to Pinuccia Contino, who's the head of unit in the European Commission, DG Just, and Sara Gueva, who's from the Portuguese perm rep to the EU. So firstly, we're going to hear from Pinuccia. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jack, and thank you to all the panelists, because I must say what I've heard until now has been really music to my ears. I've been hearing aspects, points, problems, issues to be solved that I think we are all aware about. So we share a common understanding of what the main challenges are in the field of product safety today, how to address them. Of course, the different stakeholders can have different sensitiveness and different options for the solutions. And the role of the Commission is to hear everybody and then try to come up with the best possible proposal, so that after that, the discussion and the works with the co-legislators, with Council and with the Parliament can be harmonious, can be around the same shared objective, which in our case is the health and safety of consumers. So I would say we definitely in the Commission are putting the consumer at the center, without forgetting, of course, the aspects raised by several of the panelists that we need to ensure a level playing field. This creates different challenges when we talk about what is being, for example, imported from outside of the EU, in particular through the online channels, compared to what can happen on the territory in a brick and mortar shop. But our final ambition and objective is to guarantee that we have the same level of safety when the consumer shops online or offline. And I'm quite confident to see around the virtual table here today that we all agree on those objectives. I can also assure to you that we have been working very, very hard already for several years, because I will not repeat here the story of the package of 2013, which was unfortunate, but at the same time constituted already a first touchstone compared to 2001, the year of birth of the GPSD, that already gave us quite a lot to reflect on, because I think that already in 2013, the proposal of the Commission was very, very good. Then we all know how it went, But what I can assure you, and what you have all been seeing, certainly since last year when we started the consultations, when we published the Inception Impact Assessment, and with all the stakeholders meetings, the informal meetings with the Parliament, with the Council, with the Perm Rep, with our member state authorities who then have to enforce the legislation on the ground, we have tried to build upon that already very sound base and bring some new responses, possibly, especially to the latest challenges. And here I refer, of course, to the online challenges. You have seen in the DSA that we are already putting in place the possibility for product safety legislation and the GPSD in particular to go further. I think there is a very, very wide agreement, both inside and outside the Commission on this. So we'll definitely do and propose something that we have been discussing with all of you that can be at the same time ambitious and realistic. Because as you were all pointing out, we should never forget the importance of enforcement. I know that there are a lot of member state authorities among the audience today, and they are the ones on the front. Every day they need to be there to establish the priorities and find these dangerous products. Just like Sylvia was explaining, as you did, they also do a first, I would say, identification of the highest risks before going and taking the products so they can check if they're safe. Because we all expect as consumers to only find safe products on the market, not only because it's the law, but because it's our culture, it's our understanding. It's also the way we work all together with all our producers, most of whom are really there to serve the consumer, and they want to do their best for the consumers. However, we need to find those who willingly or unwillingly have put unsafe products on the market. Because one thing that nobody has talked about, but which is also very important for us, is the increase of effectiveness of recalls. It can happen that a product becomes dangerous, not necessarily because it has evolved during its lifetime, which is of course a problem brought by the new technologies, but also because at some point we realize, for example, that a chemical component is very dangerous. In that case, the legislation must enable the most effective recall possible. And we all know that for the moment, this is not the case. This is not one of the strong points of the GPSD, for example. So we are working also on that. And I hear you absolutely on the necessity to clarify that when we talk about a product, we talk about the entirety of the product. And we talk about the harm that it can bring to the consumer. And when we talk about health, it's not only physical health, it can be mental health. And by the way, I have often interesting discussions also with industry on this. Actually, the current GPSD already covers mental health because it takes the definition of the WHO. That includes both physical and mental health. But until now, products were essentially physical. So we would only see the physical part of that. Now that we also have the connected part, the AI-powered part, and so on, there might be bigger risks also on mental health. We need to make sure that if this happens, our member state authorities can demonstrate this, or the consumer can demonstrate this, and this can be corrected. So just to give you a very deep dive in what we are doing at the moment, one word on the process, because you were asking also, when will this happen? It's urgent. We want to keep the indication of time that we have put in the work program, in spite of any sort of complications that can arise in the internal proceedings. So we really hope that the Commission can adopt the proposal by the end of June, because we said by second quarter 2021. So after that, it will depend, of course, on our dear friends in the Parliament and the Council, how long the discussions will take. But if we are all clear about the common objective, we are all clear about how to go about it, and we are all clear about the fact that we want to ensure consumer safety and a level playing field, then I'm quite confident that we can manage in not a too long time. And if in the end we propose a regulation, because I hear you and we definitely know the advantages that this would bring, I'm not anticipating, but we definitely hear you in the Commission, and I know that many member states also would favor a proposal for a regulation. Then the advantage is that it can be immediately effective, following, of course, the decision of the entry into force date. So I think that I might have spoken more than 5 minutes, but I felt that I needed to reply a bit to all of you.
No, we really appreciate it. I think that was sort of, it's certainly, you know, as I said, the ball's in your court at the moment. Everybody's waiting to see what comes out. Pinuccia, just for sort of planning purposes, can you stay with us for a bit longer? Are you okay to hang around, or yeah, I'm going to run off. Okay, great. Perfect. So we'll have some questions for you shortly, but I'm now going to move over to Sara Gueva from the Portuguese Perm Rep. Obviously, Portugal holding the sort of rolling presidency of the European Council at the moment. Sara, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Thank you, and let me to thank BEUC and my compatriots, MP Maria Manuel Leitão Marques, for the invitation to be here to speak about a pillar of consumer protection, product safety, and one of its main classic legal tools, the GPSD. The good thing of being the last speaker is that I just can say I fully agree with everything that was said today, and it's done. But I would like to say that it's true that I fully agree with everything that was said, but I also want to say that we need to revise the GPSD, not only because the future is so digital, not only because we are facing the digital transformation, but also because we need to complete, reinforce, and clarify, and these three words are from the text of the GPS itself, some of the provisions of the GPSD in order to improve its application on the not on the market, not the offline markets, and the real markets, the one that we are used to talk about. So the revision, regarding the revision, we have two main concerns. The one is linked to the legal text itself, and then we fully agree with everything that was said, the safety nets, the alignment with all the terminology, with the regulation 1020 and 515 from 2019. We need to stress Article 8 in order that we can use more and more the precautionary principle, especially when withdrawals and recalls, But our main worry as member states is regarding enforcement. And we really think that, and we have spoken already about this, we really think that the GPSD is a good example of the way the soft law works with law, the interplay between soft law and law. So we really think that we should have a legal text like we need, everybody says we need, and we really need one for the digital transformation. But we also need to have a strong enforcement in the member states. So we need that, for instance, we need that the interplay between the GPSD or the GPSR, a good interplay between the GPSD and the GPSR with, for instance, the Blue Guide that is on revision. So we really think that the revision of the Blue Guide, the ongoing revision of the Blue Guide, should already have in mind the revision of the GPSD. We also think that we have to work with standardization, and we really need a clear mandate for standardization. And here I have to say that we really want to improve the participation of consumers and consumer association on the standardization process. And this is also a responsibility for member states. On the right of information, we really need to improve the right of information, and we really need to make easier the work that the enforcement authorities are doing in the ground. So we know for a long time ago that the economics of consumer protection are the economics of the information. This is coming from the 70s, of the 18s that we learn when we study consumer protection. So we know that we should improve our labelling information. It's very important, for instance, that the RAPEX system, the safety gate, can have a more easier interplay between the gate and the ICS, and yes, the information and cooperation system for market surveillance. So we need that to be in place in order to better enforce our law, because we also have to bear in mind all the detriment caused on consumers because we are buying unsafe products. And on the legal text, because despite all the theoretical approach that we can have, and very useful theoretical approach, I think we also need to have a strategic foresight approach. The European Commission now is trying to launch a study on foresight on the consumer field. So we need to have this foresight approach to understand long-term trends in order to protect consumers' interests and improve their resilience. So we have, as a member state, we have two main points. The theoretical one regarding the legal text, that's the foresight, the safety nets, the alignment terminology, and then the more practical one, which is the enforcement authorities. And on the enforcement authorities, besides everything that I said before, we also need to have to improve administrative cooperation. The current GPSD as a committee on product safety authorities, but doesn't have a committee on enforcement authorities. This is what we need. We need to improve cooperation among enforcement authorities, and we really appreciate the encouragement that the Commission is putting on this, on the market surveillance in the internal market, and the use that they want that the Commission wants us to make of the resilience tool. And financially speaking, we can use the resilience tool to support, financially speaking, the market surveillance in the market surveillance activities in the market. So what you want, I think also I have to praise a little bit the GPSD, because I think this is a very good, it increased a lot, it increased a lot, it improved a lot the empowerment, consumers' empowerment. It improved a lot the relationship between civil society and member state authorities, and it improved a lot our awareness. I think this is very good to have this in mind, that 20 years ago, from 20 years now, the work of civil society is completely and really meritorious. We have to think about all the work done by consumer associations across Europe, from Finland to Ultra Consumo, DECO in Portugal, and this is a very good tool. That's the reason I'm praising GPSD and saying that it's a very good tool, and it's mixed very well the involvement of civil society, law and soft law, member state authorities and non-member state and civil society. So I think this is everything that I want to say. We need to improve standardization, the role of the consumer association standardization, and so I think we have the future now is so digital, but we also have to work on non-digital market too. Thanks you.
So I'm going to stay with you. My question to you would be, how do you think, in your discussions with the other member states, how much urgency do you think they feel surrounding this update? Do you think member states are ready to engage, put this as a top priority and get moving once the Commission proposals come out? Or do you think it could be held up and delayed?
Yeah, thank you, Frank. Thank you, Jack. Besides all the positive things that I said about GPSD, we are also very realistic on this and very pragmatic. So we think that we need to revise as soon as possible the GPSD, especially because of the digital market. of course. But we also, and especially we have this very important issue of traceability of the product. We need, especially when we are talking about products from third countries, we need to clearly identify the product. We need to identify the producer. This is the only way to trace the product. So regarding the urgency, I think we are very committed on working on this very fast in order that we can have a regulation or a directive as soon as possible.
Thank you so much. We have a question from Carol Lopez, which I think is probably one for you, Pinuccia. Aside from protecting consumers through the system, we should also give them tools and knowledge about how to navigate online market safety. Are these information and education plans incorporated in the revision's communication strategy is the question.
Well, actually, good news. On that kind of policy initiatives, we can already work, and actually we have been working on this already for several years. For example, with joint communication campaign on online sales, be it with the OECD, also at international level, recently also with Canada, because we haven't spoken a lot about international cooperation, but this is also one of the essential elements of product safety. If we want to be alerted about all sorts of new products and new dangers arriving, as now we live in a global world, it is very important to have excellent cooperation relations also with other jurisdictions and third countries. And this is what we are doing, both as far as countries which have a similar market as ours are concerned, like Canada, the US, and so on, or the highly producing countries like China. And we have a memorandum of understanding with China, whereby we regularly send them the indications we have from the Safety Gate Rapid systems on dangerous products originating from China. And actually the Chinese ministry checks and takes measures against the producers. So this has been quite effective, and we want also to scale it up. And this year we will finalize an action plan on online sales with China. So watch out for it. I think it will be very interesting.
All eyes.
Can I just add something? So for you to imagine our urgency, as soon as we have the proposal from the European Commission, the Portuguese presidency plans to have a kickoff meeting at the council. The G23 is the Consumer Council, the Consumer Party for consumers. So as soon as we have the proposal, we will launch the discussion, and we will have a discussion on the impact assessment and also an overview of the proposal. Unfortunately, the Portuguese presidency will not have time to go in depth in the discussion of the legal text, article by article, preamble, and etc. But with this, we really want to stress and underline our commitment with this policy area, and also to show our engagement and the importance that we give to the role of consumers in our economy, in our economy. So for you to imagine, your question was about the urgency. As urgency, we have the proposal. As soon as we have it, as soon as we start discussing it.
Perfect. Okay, so I think we've probably got about sort of 13 minutes left if we run on the timings that we were on before. I hope everyone can join it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move on to just getting some of the audience questions out there. I'll try to direct them towards who I think might be the most relevant, but if you want, just jump in and start talking as well. That's absolutely fine. One of the questions I saw was about, struggling to find it, was about second-hand products online, though, in the online space. And this is something that's important. How can that be coming under the update? How do we make sure that second-hand products that are sold online are looked after in the correct way? I don't know who that would go to, actually. Is there anyone that would like to come in on that?
I can already, yeah.
Go on, yeah, Pinuccia, please.
I can already say that actually second-hand products are already covered by the GPSD. So they will be covered, of course, also by the successor. Because again, we need to cover the safety of the products along their lifetime and life cycle.
And can I say, on top of that, it's not a guarantee, it's not a legal guarantee where the seller is liable. Here, it's the producer who is liable, whatever the journey of a product. So the producer has to ensure that over the lifespan of the product, that product remains safe, even if it has been sold at different times.
So Jack, let's say something. I've spoken about this with Pinuccia already. So it is really easy to understand the link between the revision, the GPS revision, and the digital transformation. It is less evident or less clear to understand the revision of the GPSD with the green transition. So this is something that, and it is a very good question, the question about second-hand products, because it is linked with the lifespan of the product. So I think we really need to work a little bit more on it, because it's completely clear the revision and the digital transformation is less clear, the revision and the Green Deal or the green transformation. So this is something that we need to reflect, dwell into a little bit more.
So
but I really appreciate the openness of the European Commission, that is always open to discuss this kind of thing with us, and this is for sure will speed up the process.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna try and blitz through some other questions quickly. So Gronau has a question for you, Maria Manuel. Do you agree that it would be favourable to establish a new safety requirement called risk adequate resistance of a product in the GPSD? Wouldn't it be an opportunity to set a strong impulse on the upcoming revision? That was from Gronau, that question.
I don't know if I understand the question. I'm not sure.
Okay, there's a little bit of pre that I didn't read. I thought you might be able to pick up. So regarding the revision, it has to be beared in mind that nevertheless there is some product categories already additional sectoral regulation for machinery and toys, etc.
Yes, of course. Of course, the revision is the first revision, and as Monique said before, we need to fix the principles, the main principles that can also inform the revision of the Toys Directive, and machinery is on the pipeline, both of them, and other specific regulation for some products, health products, for instance, health devices with IoT too nowadays that need a more specific care, and it is what we discussed before about high risk products and less risky products, and you need to be proportional in our demands for different products to enter in the market. And I would like only to stress a point that Sarah referred, that is very important. Of course, maybe it's good to move from a directive to a regulation, because it's easier to have the same, to harmonize the regulation in all the member states, but after that, with a regulation or with a directive, we have the problem of the enforcement. And this is very important to care of this problem, promoting more administrative cooperation between market surveillance authorities, giving them some tools, and experiment. In Portugal, and Sarah knows, we are experimenting using artificial intelligence to improve our market regulation authority. And we can experiment different ways in different member states, and after with administrative cooperation implementing them at European level. Thank you.
Thanks. So another question we've had from Pia Kathofer is about the responsibility of the consumer being considered, about smartphone updates and the need to change passwords. This was part of what we were discussing earlier, and she's directed that towards specifically BEUC and Annex. So maybe Monique, if you can talk about that sort of responsibility, our need as consumers with our phones to be.
This is a very interesting question, and I think it also goes to the core issue also about consumer information and consumer education. You cannot, I mean, we are living in a digital world. You cannot put the responsibility on consumers to manage their digital appliances top level. It should not become a full-time job to manage all your smart appliances. So what we ask is protection by design. And if you don't put, you have a password that you need to update and you don't update it, then the machine should stop working. That's the signal for you that there is a problem, but it should not become unsafe. You see the difference? So there should be protections embedded in the product itself or in its software that prevent the consumers from being exposed to risk if they failed to do something. And this is a fundamental issue. You can, of course, we are all in favor of consumer information and education, but don't use that as an excuse to shift responsibility towards the individual consumer. We are living in a world of asymmetry of information and asymmetry of knowledge about how things function. And so the responsibility should be with those who can make those products function properly and safely.
Yeah,
but of course, Jack, all of us need more education on cybersecurity. This is a very critical point. We have not discussed because we cannot discuss everything, but it's very important to spread the education on cybersecurity.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting as well because we have so many products, so many accesses that actually we can't read everything. We can't know everything about our products. There has to be the expectation. So there's a question from Karen Rumar as well. Will DSA, the Digital Services Act, give enough responsibility to marketplaces in their proactive work as other economic operators have? She doesn't think they will. I suppose, I don't know if Pinuccia, if that's something that you can comment on.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. I can elaborate a bit on what I was saying. The DSA is putting the general framework, but then it is leaving the possibility to more specific legislation, and this is very clear for product safety. You find it already in Article 1 of the proposal to go further because we need more specific measures and provisions. So definitely, I think we will be able to do so, and we will do it in, I would say, in coherence with our action in the last years. As you know, we have promoted the Product Safety Pledge, which is a voluntary commitment by platforms, by online marketplaces. So you can already see in which direction we are thinking. And we are seeing that those kind of activities that for the moment are carried out on a voluntary basis can be carried out. So that's definitely a possibility to better enforce product safety also in the online world.
Perfect. I'm going to go to one more question, actually. It's quite a long one, but I think it's actually really interesting. It's from Bettina Schierning. I hope I'm not butchering your name there. She represents a Danish trade organization with members that she says go a long way to comply to European product safety and liability legislation, and of course new legislation on green transitions, both online and offline. And that's part of their declared goal. But she says if you take an angle on this, it's of most important that we make sure that this type of business can still function. And she sees that the fact that it's possible for sellers from third countries to sell their products through EU or non-EU online marketplaces to EU customers without any operator in the EU being liable and responsibility for safety is undermining consumer safety in the internal market, she says. Our fear is that this gap, if the gap isn't closed immediately, more European businesses that don't care about consumer safety can change their business model to online marketplace and avoid responsibility. Will this gap be closed by the Commission? That's her question. And I think we've touched on it a little bit, but I mean, we have to throw this to you, Pinuccia, again.
Yeah, absolutely. So we all know about the discussion that was held in Council and Parliament concerning the responsible person for the regulation 1020. So of course we are reflecting and we are discussing with our colleagues in DG Grow that proposed that that started discussing on that 2 years ago to see whether this could be an appropriate solution. I cannot give you already the end of the discussion, but we are thinking how to align at best the powers of member state authorities, both for harmonized and non-harmonized legislation, because I think it was Stephen saying this. Consumers, and they're right, cannot understand why the baby bed can be protected less well than the baby doll bed. So we need to reply also to that kind of answers.
Very good example.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Very
So
good.
I think we're going to have to start. I'm going to start wrapping it up now, because I know that obviously we started late, and I think if we go, we'll go too long. One of the things I always do when I moderate an event is ask all the panelists, is there anything that you would like to add to this event that if you don't say it, it will annoy you when you continue with the rest of your day? If there's anyone that wants to just bring something in and get it down, then please feel free to take the floor.
Oh,
Right. Oh, you go first. Sorry, Leah.
I think I've been a bit quiet because I think also, you know, we are representing retailers and also wholesalers, so also the B2B traders. But so we are not producers. So I think in that sense, I think what is important for us is that we ensure that you know, every player in the supply chain has their own role to play, has their own responsibilities. So I think what's important for us, that these are proportionate to the role that every player has. And I think for retailers, we have to act with due care. But obviously, we don't produce these products. You know, we don't do the update. We sell the product, so we have a responsibility, but not the ultimate responsibility for the product. And I think I heard a lot of people also, you know, enforcement important. Well, I think I was very clear about that. And also, I think different pieces of legislation have been mentioned. But I think I would want to emphasize, because I see this in different discussions, that, you know, we're talking about DSA, we're talking about GPSD, market surveillance, Blue Guide, you know, and these are all different things. So we should also be careful not to mix them up, because we you know, DSA is about at least if we, in this context, about the online sales of goods, right? So it's not about the actual product, because that's the market surveillance regulation, that's the GPSD. And I think we need to be, so if we want to be effective, I think we need to also and I think that's also probably a message to the Parliament and the member states that have to think about all of this as well in the decision-making process. Like, think carefully about, you know, how you want to shape this, and obviously we'll come with our input, but also to maintain a coherent and sensible legal framework for everybody.
Yeah, I think.
So Jack, once that you asked, so I just want to stress the fact that today at the Compet Council, the ministers will speak about consumer resilience and the key role of consumers for the economic recovery. So this is an important point, and we are going to discuss that from 12. I think I have to run, but we think, and link the resilience with safety. We think that we can improve resilience if we improve safety. So consumers will be more resilient and more prepared for future crises if they are resilient. So, and this can happen only if you have resilient societies. So this is to stress again the huge and meritorious work done by civil society and member state authorities, enforcement authorities, and on the enforcement of the GPSD. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And anyone else, just a quick comment before we go through?
If I could just jump in there, I fully agree with Sarah's comment, because before the pandemic, consumer spending made up 54% of EU GDP. So you've got to have consumers on board. It's not just enough to have business on board. Two things very quickly, Jack. We focus really on connected products today. GPSD is also far more general. Certainly, I think we also want to see a pan-EU accidents and injuries database set up. I answered a question on that earlier, because we need to see where problems are, and not only that, we need to see whether the solution, be it legislation or standards, addresses it. Secondly, we really want the new GPSD to look at the chemical safety of products. So two more general things to add on to the previous list. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Monique now to give us a sort of wrap-up comment.
I'll try to do my best, because I know that we are all late. Well, can I say, I mean, it's not concluding remarks, because we are far from a conclusion, but let's say some final thoughts to take home. I think we all agree that GPSD needs an ambitious update, and it should be principle-based, and it should maybe even change name from GPSD to GPSR. Let's see what that brings with it. Several legal gaps need to be filled. and everybody agrees about that, to capture all market players, to capture all types of products and all types of business models. And also there is, of course, the need to improve the enforcement, meaning that not only do you need to give the regulatory framework that gives more powers to the authorities, but also at member state level, you need to empower the authorities, giving them more resources, giving them more tools, giving them more trainings, because you need the geeks to understand what's happening in some cases. So that is certainly very important. And if you can really update that framework in that way, this is not only a win for consumers in terms of safety, it's also a win for the businesses. And I really would like to insist on that, that level playing field that you need to have between different types of businesses, that is certainly something that can also ensure, can I say, resilience of some of the business organizations or companies that are now already engaged into very, let's say, ambitious safety protocols, and that should not be pushed out of the marketplace because there are rogue traders or less compliant traders. What I also see is that there is a need of change of concept. So the principle of conformity at the time of placing on the market is something of the past. Now we are speaking about continued conformity. Also, I think that innovation per se, beyond the hype, is not always doesn't always need to be prioritized, and should certainly be, let's say, checked against the precautionary principle. There is also there has been the word consumer trust and consumer resilience. Of course, we hear that very often, that consumer trust and resilience are the basis of a good functioning market. Now that has to be brought beyond the buzzword to reality. Keep that in mind. And with saying that, I would really like to provide all our encouragements to the Commission for an ambitious proposal, to the European Parliament for keeping them in check and certainly trying to make it as consumer friendly as possible, to the Council also, in order to provide for a swift but still ambitious overhaul of the regulatory safety framework. Thanks to all of you, to the panelists for a lively debate. I think that Jack had some difficulty in keeping us in the row, but you did perfectly well, Jack. And thank you very much to the audience for staying so long with us, even with those technical problems that were a little bit out of our control. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Monique. I think I agree. We've had huge retention on this event, which firstly shows how interesting everyone's been, and secondly, how much people want to see what's coming in this directive as well. I'm not going to list everyone. I'm just going to say thank you so much for joining, because we're running over. It's been a great debate, and I wish you all the best for the rest of your days. And we're all looking forward to seeing this directive when it comes in June, Pinuccia. Have a great
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you very much. Very interesting for me. Very useful too. Thank you.
It was a pleasure.